My research question is, in what ways does a photographer's point of view and artistic choices affect the meaning of an image? And I'm focusing on social documentary photographer Dorothea Lange and her iconic image, Migrant Mother, which was taken during the 1930s in the USA during the Great Depression. The importance of my question is really, I think, in order to better understand an important sort of photograph, it's really valuable to understand one is what were the history and culture of the time, but also a photographer's point of view, and I mean here their experiences, their values, and also how do they choose to take the picture. So that was key, and I was looking to understand that. I did secondary research in two areas. One was in social documentary movement, and the other one is in Dorothea Lange herself and her history. And I did probably a little bit too much research, but yeah, I was quite enthralled by it all. One big thing I thought was interesting is that I thought documentary photography was about informing, but it seems to be more than that. It's about persuading and convincing and paving the way for social change. Hence, I think the reason the name for social documentary versus normal, just regular documentary. The Great Depression really started in 1929 with the financial crash, and the economy in the States and in Europe too was on its knees, and people were out of work. It's really, really hard times. But the people in the southwestern states, which were mainly farmers, were hit even worse. For 9 years, there was nothing but these terrible dust storms, which meant that they had no more crops. They couldn't grow anything. So a lot of them left, and 300,000 of them moved to California in a search of work, and there just wasn't the work there for them. So the government set up several agencies to raise awareness and provide relief. And one of these was the the Farm Security Administration, otherwise known as the FSA. And they hired photographers, Dorothea Lange being one of them, to photograph what was happening. And it was the biggest documentary program of its kind. 250,000 images were taken. Just under 80,000 prints were distributed free of charge to the media. And anybody could use them. They're free, and to this day you're able to use them, including Migrant Mother. And the big thing about this too is it influenced a whole generation of photojournalists. Just to understand Dorothea, her point of view was to understand a little bit about her history. So she was born in 1895. Of wealthy German American parents living in New Jersey. But two things had an impact on her. One, at the age of 7, she contracted polio, which left her with a limp and a deformed foot. And that really marked her. She was quite complex about it. The other thing was her father abandoned the family when she was 12, and this really upset her, and she took it personally. And she had an unhappy childhood as a result. She had a difficult relationship with her mother, and she was left to fend for herself a lot of times, had to come back at night, walking through difficult areas where there was a lot of drunks, and she learned to keep an expression of face that drew no attention, to be invisible. And this served her very well for photography in her career. When she came out of school, she attended photography courses with leading pictorial photographers at the time. She then embarked on what was supposed to be a world trip and didn't get any further than San Francisco. Fortunately, she was robbed, but she remained there and built a very successful portrait business photographing the well-to-do in San Francisco. Her first husband was an artist, and she moved in the sort of artistic milieu. But when the Great Depression hit, her interest changed, and she started to take more of what was happening around. And it was an exhibition of her photographs that came to the attention of Paul Taylor, who was an economist and hired by the FSA. He saw them and thought this would give a lot more strength to his reports. And so he encouraged FSA to hire her. They subsequently got married and produced a book called The American Exodus. Just understanding Dorothea Lange, her point of view is she supported the vulnerable, the underdog, and she was very empathetic towards them. And as you can understand, that's, you know, she could empathize with what was happening with them. She valued hardworking folk, particularly working mothers, because, you know, it was difficult being a professional woman in those days, or even trying to look after your family. She believed captions brought pictures to life, and she was convinced that images could provoke change and reform, and she was very successful at doing that. Regarding her artistic choice, she was pictorial in her style. She photographed attractive people because she realized that that would have greater appeal. She shot at hip level, and she posed them against sort of low horizon skies so that they would look more dignified and you wouldn't have the sort of poverty around. She used diagonals and close-up shots so that you really got engaged with the people. She posed. She used her skills that she learned in portraiture, but her whole approach and her limp meant that she wasn't seen as a threat, and people revealed themselves to her. She also cropped her pictures as she saw fit. Regarding my primary research, I did this online due to COVID, and there was 3 museums that had pictures of hers, 2 in the States and the Barbican, who had it in the past. In fact, MoMA in San Francisco have got an exhibition now, so there's plenty of pictures to see there. And I used the Library of Congress, which has all the FSA pictures from that time. Looking at Migrant Mother, she claimed that she had taken 5 pictures leading up to the ultimate one, the Migrant Mother. But when she died, 2 other photographs were found, which she'd never submitted. And you can see why, looking at my slide, the 2 bottom ones. Her approach was to come in from a distance, taking the tent and the whole environment, and then moving closer and closer. And you can see that the picture Migrant Mother itself is, you would think it's posed, looking at the rest of the one, the way the woman was sort of holding herself with such dignity. She was handsome. You had the children around, the baby in the lap. It was a sort of a real Madonna pose. Just looking at the picture on the right, you'll notice that there's a disembodied thumb right at the bottom of the picture. That's somebody probably opening up the tent, but she cropped that out when she exhibited in galleries. Regarding her artistic choices, as I said, she posed the woman, children, was very symbolic, a sort of a Madonna style pose, close cropping, so it became timeless because you didn't have you didn't see the camp or the tent or whatever, and she didn't name the woman in the photograph either, so it made her an archetype, not an individual, and she became symbolic of that sort of time, sort of a hopeless but dignified, hardworking woman. There was a lot of controversy around the photograph, but I'll let you read that in the slides in my document. Regarding my conclusions, as I mentioned, I think it was interesting to really understand Dorothea Lange, and you could see how her point of view revealed herself in her photographs, and as a result how her photographs influenced society and the whole social documentary movement. Her artistic choices were to persuade, convince, and pave the way for change. Propaganda, you might say, but you know, she got what they wanted to achieve, to make that changes, and people know about it. A meaning of an image is influenced by many factors: context, place, choice of subjects, technical manipulation, etc., etc. But I think to conclude, Lange says it best. She says, every image he sees, every photograph he takes becomes, in a sense, a self-portrait. And on top of that, I would say, there's also the viewer's point of view and possibly artistic choices or likes will also influence how that photograph is seen.